Hey, what's up everyone? Tim here from Everyday Tactical Vids. I recently got this knife from Work Tuff Gear. This is the Wilderness Warrior. And as soon as I saw it, I thought of this knife, which is the BK9 from Ka-Bar. This is really like a classic when it comes to wilderness survival knives. As you can see, it's brand new. I've never used it before. And I thought, let's compare the BK9 with the Wilderness Warrior, see if this new one can stand up to really, one of the standards when it comes to survival knives out there. Hey guys, quick note as we kick this video off. If you're familiar with Ka-Bar, you may know the BK7, which is very similar to the Wilderness Warrior in size and shape. And I actually thought if we compared those two, it'd be kind of boring just because they're so similar. So that's why I wanted to look at the BK9 compared to the Wilderness Warrior, because there are some similarities, but there are also some differences as well. So I'll give you the details on both knives and then we'll put them through the paces. And let's see what we think comparing the BK9 from Ka-Bar to the Wilderness Warrior from Work Tuff Gear. Let's start off and go through some details on the Wilderness Warrior first. So obviously it's a fixed blade knife. It does have full tang construction, meaning that the steel is going to be one piece from the tip all the way to the other end. Your overall length is 12.2 inches, your blade length 6.9 inches, your cutting edge is 6.1 inches. Your blade thickness is 0.196 inches, so not a quarter inch, but also not, thin to the point that I'd be concerned about using it aggressively. So it's got a nice thickness in my opinion. It does come with a saber grind with a convex cutting edge. It is a drop point style knife. Your blade steel is SK85 with a Rockwell hardness of 56 to 58. This one just has your normal coating on it. Your handle material is G10 in OD green. Your knife weight is 15.3 ounces with the sheath, 19.8 ounces. The sheath, you'll see in a minute, has a belt loop, and the sheath is made of Kydex. Couple features I think worth noting. We do have a bow drill divot here. I will show you the handle in a second so you can see what the palm swell looks like. We do have a choil here so you can sharpen it all the way back and also get your finger up there for some more detail work. And then we do have some jimping here. I would call it more than medium. I would call it toward aggressive, but if medium is a 5 and aggressive is a 10, I would probably put this at like a 6.5 maybe. Quick look at the palm swell there. You can see where it widens out there, so it's going to fit into your palm. And then you can see mine has the green handles with the red liners there. It does have a lanyard hole, and you can see I've got a lanyard on mine already. Give you a quick end-to-end look here. Let's cover the details on the BK9. Your weight is 1.05 pounds. Your blade type obviously is a fixed blade. The blade length is 9.25 inches. Your overall length, 14.75 inches. They say it's a 20-degree edge angle. It is a clip point style blade. Your knife material is 1095 Crovan. It is a flat grind. You have Ultramid for the handle material. Rockwell hardness is 56 to 58. It does come with a sheath, which is ballistic nylon. Your blade thickness, 0.188 inches, and your blade width is 2.063 inches. A couple details here. You do have a lanyard hole, nice big lanyard hole, so you can fit cordage through that easily. Very flat pommels, that's going to be good for crushing. It doesn't have a full finger choil, but it does have a choil there, so you can sharpen it all the way to the back or to the end of the blade. And then up here, your jimping, I would call it medium, right? So on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most aggressive, I would put this right in the middle at 5. It isn't a very long thumb ramp there, so just a heads up that, it's got basically, 3 little bumps maybe, let's say. It is comfortable. It seems to, work fine as far as how it feels in hand as I've been holding it. But yeah, not a ton of jimping there. All right, we'll start off and just do some basic feather sticking here, starting with the Wilderness Warrior. Not using gloves at this point, just so I can get a sense of, how the knife feels in hand without the extra protection of having some gloves on. So it seems to be doing a fine job here. I don't think either of these guys are going to do really well with a fire steel as far as the spine, just because of the coating on the knife, but we'll see. We'll give it a shot in a little bit. So that's just the first quick look, and I'll do some more carving with this, but seems to do quite nicely as far as feather sticks. All right, with the BK9 now. Just flip it around to the other side. So you get that saber grind versus a flat grind. In general, I find a flat grind a little bit harder to work with, but that's just me. Size-wise, I can definitely feel the longer the greater length on this one. I do feel like there's just, you know, more kind of hanging out that far end that I have to control. Definitely not terrible though. I can tell you pretty quickly though, right now, my hand feels already slightly more fatigued than with the Wilderness Warrior. I do know a lot of people swap out these handles if they get a BK9 or even a BK2 and they get custom handles made. This guy, as far as the actual, you know, a little bit of carving here, seems to do just fine. So there's your BK9, just initial, you know, feather stick try. Seems to do just fine. There's the BK9. There's the Wilderness Warrior. Just to show you real quick side by side, obviously you're getting a couple extra inches out of the BK9 with your blade length. So as far as batoning, you're going to just, you know, have more length on the blade for the BK9. So that's going to give you the opportunity to baton larger pieces of wood. Both of these should be totally sufficient. You know, something that big is a pretty large piece of wood to be batoning through. So if you did something even bigger on the BK9, that would be pretty massive. So I think they should both do okay. So starting off here with the Wilderness Warrior. Yeah, making quick work of this stuff. All right, something a little bit thicker here. Gotta work this a little bit harder. This piece of wood is definitely quite twisted. I think this baton's gonna break before the knife does. There we go. Yeah, see if you can see the twist in that wood. That is serious. Some serious twists. All right, let's try this guy now. Here's the work of the Wilderness Warrior, no problem. All right, onto the BK9 here. All right, something a bit thicker here. Finally got through. And that is the end of this baton. Batoning with the BK9, no problem. Do a little chopping here with the Wilderness Warrior. I'm not going to use the lanyard at this point because I don't have one on the BK9. Let's just try it without. That thing really bites in there. I do have to hold the lanyard a little bit just so it's not getting caught underneath the blade. I will tell you, as soon as I start chopping, I'm trying to find a comfortable location, not just with a standard grip, but, you know, choking my hand back. And this little hook is digging a little bit into my hand here. So with gloves, probably no problem. But without gloves on, a little bit uncomfortable. So I'm just doing a standard grip now. And that thing really bites in. So definitely more comfortable with the lanyard on. I will tell you, because the blade isn't so long, you know, as you're swinging with the lanyard on or off, there's a little bit of nervousness that you're going to bash your fingers on the wood there. So choking back definitely gives you a little bit more kind of comfort as far as not worrying about bashing your fingers. But yeah, that little hook, maybe in the next edition they can round that out just a little bit more, because then it'll allow you to get this kind of this type of grip more comfortable, or even a 3-finger grip more comfortably for chopping. But still, obviously, man, this thing chops nicely for a, you know, not a huge knife. All right, on to the BK9 now. Yeah, I can immediately tell you the length of the blade just makes it easier. And again, no lanyard here. Yeah, so as far as chopping, that was a bit more comfortable than the Wilderness Warrior. Not a huge difference, but just because I think of the length of the blade, it was a bit easier. I'm gonna do kind of a standard grip now and not choke back too much. So that broke through there. Whenever I do these head-to-head reviews, and even generally knife reviews, I'll show a bunch of footage on camera, and then I'll come back, you know, in the future, which is no time on camera here, but just so I'm not doing like a 10-minute test and then going, here's my final conclusions. So I'll talk about what I've experienced so far. We'll keep testing it. We'll talk about the sheaths in a minute here, and then we'll have some longer-term use, basically. So let me just give you some initial thoughts. Chopping, I would go with the BK9, just because the extra length seems to work nicely. I will tell you that this guy really bites into the wood in the chopping process. So that was really nice. The handles, I would say both of them, lanyard's definitely gonna be a win. Neither of them for the chopping process felt great because, you know, let me just show you the hook there. Probably more pronounced on this than it is on this. But when you're holding with 2 fingers, it is gonna kind of dig back in your hands. With gloves on, probably no problem, I would guess, just because the irritation will go away. And I could definitely chop for a while with these. It was just that you could initially feel some of that kind of digging in there. I could do just like a normal hammer grip with this guy. With this guy I could, but like I said, I was a little concerned about bashing my knuckles against the wood just because of, again, your blade length difference right between the two. But both of them chop nicely. I mean, you saw the batoning, both of them are gonna do a good job. I don't really think the length of the BK9 is gonna give you a huge advantage over the Wilderness Warrior when it comes to batoning, because again, you know, if you're batoning something that's like from this finger all the way out to here, that's a massive piece of wood. I guess you might do that, but in general, I'm batoning things like this, and so on either of these blades, that really shouldn't be a problem. So just, you know, initial tests with these first couple things, some feather sticks, some batoning, some chopping, I would say they're comparing nicely. There's not a huge advantage of one over the other. I do think that, I mean, if you know the BK9, the BK2, a lot of people swap out these handles because they're super durable, but they're a little bit slick. And yeah, a lot of people like to put some micarta on there or something else. They're fine, they do the job, but nothing super impressive. I do think these are nice handles. You know, if I bought this knife and was thinking of having this like my one long-term use knife, I probably wouldn't be swapping out the handles. They're quite functional as is. I will tell you, let me just show you real quick. This has a little bit of a palm swell. This one is much more exaggerated, I would say. So this one's a bit blockier, and this one, exaggerated is maybe not the right word, but definitely a notable palm swell in this one you put in your hand versus this one feels pretty neutral. So that's just a heads up. With the palm swell, when you get this in your hand, you're like, yes, I've got total control on that knife. It really kind of locks into my hand nicely. And I do think with the BK9, the general sense a lot of people have is great knife, but that chunky, smooth handle, I feel like I've really got to hold it tight so it doesn't come flying out of my hands when I'm doing aggressive cuts. So there's some initial thoughts. Let's talk about the sheaths now. Here's your sheath for the BK9 ballistic nylon. It does have a plastic liner. So this slides in and then the snap goes here. You do have a pocket here in the front where you could throw some gear if you wanted to, put something down in there. You do also have another piece of plastic in here. It's a little hard to see on camera, but my guess is that's for a smaller knife, but it looks like, you know, kind of a piggyback system. I'm guessing that's what that is. On the back, you can You can run it through your belt. It does have snaps as well as your Velcro. And then it's got this nice long piece of webbing so you can attach it to a pack, side of a pack, the back of a pack, whatever you want to do. So yeah, I think highly functional. It's going to do the job. Not super pretty, but ballistic nylon in general it's going to save money on your overall cost. But again, a lot of people, if they buy a BK9, they upgrade the handles, and then they also upgrade the sheath as well. So functional, I would definitely say that. Here's your Kydex for the Wilderness Warrior. Nice thumb ramp there. Good lock-in. Let's give it a shot here. A little bit of movement, but I wouldn't be worried about this thing falling out too easily. That's what it looks like when it's in the sheath. You got your loop here. The loop does have a snap, so that's nice. You could just run your belt through or unsnap it and put on your belt. That's what your attachment point looks like on the back. And let's look at some of your hardware. Again, functional. If you like Kydex more than ballistic nylon, then this is going to be the win. If you like ballistic nylon more than Kydex, then that one's probably going to be the win. Both of them are functional. I think the Kydex in general is prettier and a little bit more durable maybe. You do have the Work Tuff Gear logo there as well. Let me give it a little shot here just to see if this thing will. No, it's pretty solidly locked in there, which is nice. So there's a look at your Kydex for the Wilderness Warrior. There's a look at the sheath on the belt. Super functional. Just pop this like this, take the knife out, slide it back in. Does have a little bit of movement, a little bit less because it's not a straight up dangler with like a D-ring there, but it will move, if you're climbing over things. It's not going to get hung up on anything for you. So simple and functional. There's a look at your BK9 sheath. Again, you're going to have to unsnap this and draw the knife out, and then make sure that you push the little snap out of the way so it doesn't get cut as you're putting this back in. And same thing, this has some movement when you're, when you're walking. Basically, let me back up a little bit here. When you're walking, it'll give you a little bit of movement. About the same, I would say, as the Work Tuff Gears, the Wilderness Warrior. It's going to hang down a little bit lower just because it's a longer knife. But again, functional. I would say pretty much a break even, unless you're like, I really like ballistic nylon versus Kydex. Whatever your preference is, they're similar. And if you like one or the other, you're going to pick Kydex over ballistic nylon or ballistic nylon over Kydex. But overall, kind of a break even, like I said, for the sheaths. All right, I want to keep working these knives a bit. So far, I'm liking both of them. I knew the BK9 was going to be great. It's been a classic for a long time, and the Wilderness Warrior is definitely holding its own at this point compared to the BK9. All right, guys, we're back here to wrap up talking about the Wilderness Warrior and the BK9. So I've had a chance to use them on camera, which you've seen. I've had a chance to use them off camera as well. One thing I want to share real quick is I got a fire steel here. Here's the fire steel using the scraper, just so you can see it actually works. Here it is with the Wilderness Warrior using the spine. You can get a spark there. And here it is with the BK9. Not so much. So if you really crank it down, eventually you can get a spark. We have it toward the tip a little bit. But it is, obviously if you use the blade you can, but most of us don't want to use our blades for, throwing a spark off a fire steel. So every once in a while, if you get the right angle, you can get it, but not even here on camera. The Wilderness Warrior, obviously, without much work, you can definitely get a spark there. So let me share some thoughts with you about the Wilderness Warrior and the BK9, how these two compare. So first off, let's talk about the sheaths. I basically think it's a break even for the sheath. So ballistic nylon versus Kydex. I like Kydex more. This does offer you a couple more options as far as the backside there. You can attach it to a pack on the side, on the back of a pack. It also gives you the option to carry it obviously on your belt. And then that little pocket that we mentioned in the front to carry more gear. You don't have multiple carry options with the Kydex. I just think the Kydex is a little bit more durable. I like the way it looks. That's my preference. But really it's a break even depending on what your preference is. All right, let's talk about our blades. Obviously the BK9 is bigger. Like I said, when I was chopping, I just felt more comfortable because I wasn't concerned about bashing my knuckles against, the branch I was chopping. In general, I feel like as far as a chopper, this is going to work better. You're not talking about a huge difference in weight, but just the length of the blade and how it feels in hand when I'm swinging and chopping. This one just works better. The Wilderness Warrior, however, did the job, and like I said multiple times, it really bites into the wood. So I would give the slight advantage to the BK9, but not like a massive advantage over the Wilderness Warrior. For things like batoning or carving tent pegs or something like that, pretty much a break even. For batoning, if you have something really wide, obviously this is going to work better than this, but I'm generally not going to be batoning anything that's much more than, you know, maybe 4 inches across, something like that. So the Wilderness Warrior I think will work great for that as well. When you get into some more of that detail work, the nice thing about the BK9 is that it's not really heavy, so you don't feel like, you know, the tip is flying over the place as you're kind of doing maybe some carving, feather sticks like that. That being said, just the ergonomics of it with having a shorter blade, for doing more detail work, I do think the Wilderness Warrior was more comfortable, and I really am a fan of that choil right there. That allows me to choke up. I don't have to put my thumb on the jimping. I can put it out here on the spine and really get in and do more of that detail work. Whereas with the BK9, there's no, I mean, there's a choil there for sharpening, but I can't put my finger out there. You could choke out like this on the blade, but that's for very specific types of cuts, or, you know, if you're doing detail work, maybe say you're gutting a fish and you want to hold the knife like this, you could do that. I just think you have more options with the Wilderness Warrior compared to the BK9. Handles. The BK9 handles are very neutral, which I like, but pretty slippery. This one's less neutral. It definitely has that palm swell, and I feel like I have a better grip on this one. I do think the palm swell, I would like to see it move this way, down closer to the blade by maybe 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch, something like that. For me, where it fits in my palm, I would just like to see it move, like I said, closer to the blade to be more comfortable for me when I was actually using it. It wasn't really uncomfortable, but where it falls in my hand, it would be better if it was closer to the blade. Again, for me in general, if either of these had big contours, big, you know, cutouts for my fingers, no go. I definitely prefer a knife that has a more kind of blocky, chunky handle, and both of these things have that. Let's talk about steel real quick. The SK85 versus the 1095 Crovan. 1095 is just proven, just a great, great steel. SK85 from Work Tuff Gear, I've used a bunch of different knives that have that, and it's worked good. It's worked really, it's been solid. It's kept an edge really nicely. Their heat treat is excellent. So I'm not concerned about the SK85, but if I had to bank on something, I'm more comfortable with 1095 just because I'm more familiar with it. The SK85 has done the job so far, but a little bit more to be determined because I haven't used it as long term. What I can tell you is because Work Tuff Gear is, you know, there's a lot of personal work that's being put in when it comes to these knives, like, you know, hands-on, not just a bunch of machines pumping things out. I do feel like the edge that comes on these knives is excellent. The edge that came on the BK9 was, I say, good, but excellent for the Wilderness Warrior. I mean, this thing is, you can't see it now as clearly, but you can still see how much there's like a glimmer off that one. I mean, that's really like a mirror edge almost. This one, it's nice and sharp, but not like the Wilderness Warrior. Jimping, I'd give the win to the BK9 just because I prefer a little bit less aggressive jimping. I just don't need it as much. This is more aggressive with gloves, not really a problem. Same thing with this one with gloves, but without gloves, this one feels more comfortable and yet offers a little control. This one, I'd like to see it a little bit toned down. Again, my preference thing. BK9, slight advantage when it comes to jimping. Fire steel, you already saw it. Can't do it other than using the actual blade edge versus this. So Wilderness Warrior is going to win on that. Quick note here about price. So we're looking at about $160 for the Wilderness Warrior, and for the BK9, you're looking maybe $115 up to $125 depending on where you pick it up. So you're going to save some money if you get the BK9, but again, you got to figure out functionality, size, just the overall differences between the two and which one serves you better. Not a huge difference in price, but I do obviously want to let you know that there is a certain amount of money you'll save by purchasing the BK9 versus going with the Wilderness Warrior. But again, you got to think about what one fits your needs and your systems best. So some overall thoughts here. The BK9, I can see why this has been a classic for years. I can also see why as soon as people get it, they put new handles on. They get custom handles. Again, not bad, but I could definitely see something with my Carta or a G10 with a little bit more texture would really give me good control. The BK9 reminds me of the hungless, like a smaller version, slightly smaller version of the hungless, because of what the blade looks like and its width, but it's light and it's definitely maneuverable. So like for something that you can really chop with, you can still use as a blade. I feel like this is closer to a one tool option, whereas I feel like the Wilderness Warrior is more of like okay, that's a survival knife. It's not gonna do everything for you, but it's gonna do a lot of tasks quite well, but it feels more like a knife in my hand, whereas this feels more like a survival tool almost. So there's kind of a preference thing there. Between the two, because of all the advantages that I think the Wilderness Warrior has, I would actually pick this over the BK9. Though I do like the BK9, if I gave this like a good, I would give the Wilderness Warrior a great. So I've really enjoyed using this one. You'll be seeing this, you know, probably in future rotation and video and stuff like that. But Work Tuff Gear, they're continuing to put out products that I really like. This one is probably a second to me compared to the Atayal. I just think that's an awesome knife. I love the look of it, the style of it, everything about it. But this has also been a great knife too. Probably comes in second place of all the knives from Work Tuff Gear that I've tested out so far, with probably the Nomad Field knife coming in third. So yeah, both of these knives, you know, if you bought either one of them, I think you'd be happy with them. They do a good job for you in just outdoor woods tasks, and then also as survival knives as well. So let me hear your thoughts. I realize I'm kind of walking on thin ice here, saying that the BK9 may not win, but that's my experience, that's my preference. Let's hear your thoughts and feedback in the comment section. All right, guys, thanks as always for checking out the videos here on YouTube. Please subscribe to Everyday Tactical Vids if you haven't done so already. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, check us out on Instagram, Tumblr, and Vero as well. More videos coming soon. Take care.